Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chi Chats podcast. Super excited to have everyone here today. We're going to have a great podcast. I'm here with Dr. Andrew, a really beautiful friend of mine. He's a doctor, professor, a really wonderful man, and he's written 5 books on Taoism as well, which is just wonderful. And we're going to be diving into the elusive and sort of hard to really define topic of nothingness. And so we're going to chat into nothingness, reference a few different cultures that also speak to the core of nothingness as well. And we're just going to have a beautiful organic conversation and see what comes alive today around the topic of nothingness. So of course, Andrew is a doctor. So at the end of this podcast, we highly recommend just checking out the waiver. We're really enthused and we want to inspire everyone to have informed decision-making when they come to their medical health or their well-being. Of course, we're going to get into a lot of juicy topics. So we encourage you to check out the waiver as well, just so you're in a place of self-responsibility and empowerment. So yes, here we are with Dr. Andrew. Andrew, is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
Thanks for mentioning the waiver. Really, it's just, this is sort of general information around the topic and wellness and even enlightenment, perhaps, or even finding the way. So it can't really cater to individual people. So it's really just to start people with a conversation. If they really need any specific help, they should really consult their chosen registered, healthcare professional. But let's put that aside now.
Awesome. Yeah. So the big thing for me is, why should we, why nothingness? Why is it important? Like, why were the ancients, all different cultures would refer to in different names, they would talk about nothingness, but also why do you feel that nothingness is important in today's modern society? And we can both go back and forward and give our personal feeling or view on that. So why do you feel nothingness is important, Andrew?
Well, maybe the best person to start with is me, because I'm the center of my universe, and then we can go to the ancients after that. I think, that pursuit of nothingness is really, sometimes you feel in life, oh my God, it's really hard. You have your ups and downs in your career, you have your ups and downs in relationships, you have ups and downs in your health, and there seems to be, just an endless turning of the wheel, the cycle of suffering in some respects. But somehow, with all those ups and downs and those mini tragedies and all that sort of stuff, you sort of think, oh, what can I learn from this? How there must be some reason for these difficult times. And so those difficult times point you towards the ancient teachings and the ancient masters. And then they showed us the way. And through, we're going to focus a lot on Taoist alchemy today, but we'll be looking at other traditions. But they tried to teach us. They tried to say, look, hey, you're suffering because you've lost your way. You're focusing too much on the earthly realm, status, appealing to your senses, reputation, material possessions, power, all these sort of things which in the end they just hurt you. So they said, no, look, you've got to train your mind into this state of nothingness, and that will give you peace. It will help you, grow old and die, will help you move from one relationship to the next. It will help you find your mission. If you can put your mind into that space, it will make you happy. And I think that's just as true for me as it was for all these masters who went through the similar arrows and stings of outrageous fortune and the heartaches of the flesh. I think they went through exactly the same thing, and they turned to their masters for advice. And I think that's what we're doing today. Yeah.
Beautiful. I feel like, for me, why nothingness is important is it enables me a place of like solace or peace. I think it's important to reference that there's layers and levels to this. Like one level of nothingness can be like, I can feel the gap between my thoughts, and I can reveal the spaciousness of the quality of my mind. And it's like, I can take a breath of air. Maybe all of the thinking and all of the trying to calculate and work things out is just creating knots in my mind. And just that little bit of spaciousness enables me to like get a breath of the divine. And then at deeper levels, as we'll get into later on, we're really talking about there being no sound, no senses, no light. And I think that type of conversation is it's a big leap between like, well, let's just have an experience of maybe emptying my mind or being more free, and then all of a sudden going deep into nothingness. And I bring this up because that contrast, I feel, is where a lot of confusion comes up around this topic of nothingness, and also the leap of letting go of the mind, or letting go of the senses. It sounds like a radical, like a radical leap, and especially if someone's in like fear or survival, or they're really in touch with their emotions. Letting go of that self can be such a like almost like they really clasp on to holding on to that suffering, especially when they're on the edge of like opening up to like divinity or the divine. And I think that's where different religions and different traditions, they all come back to the one. I like that universal idea that they're all teaching us to go back to that oneness. And I feel like some of the separation that we experience in the world today is we cling on to the differences rather than really looking for as in Christianity, putting the eye through the needle, as you say, Andrew, and really going into the oneness, and then realizing like, wow, we all are from the same origin. We're all from the same place. And respectively, we can have a different, view and faith as to what that is, but there is that great unity that doesn't divide us. It actually brings us closer. And so for me, I feel like there's such a calling inside my heart for leadership to be, that should almost be a prerequisite, that the leaders of the world today should be able to gather together and sit in nothingness and find that unity. It should almost be a level of fitness to be a leader today in the world, since the world is so much more transparent, moving into the Aquarian age or the redreaming age. Different traditions have different names for it. But the ability for leadership to return to that nothingness and that unity, to realize like, hey, we're all part of the same one. We all have these fears and concerns, but we all have the same core divinity at the center. Like, how can we work together from this place? I really believe that should be something that should be a level of like fitness that if you want to get into leadership, there needs to be a development of returning to the nothingness or to the one.
Yeah.
So,
You made me laugh when you were talking about leadership. I thought about two things. One was, to see all the world leaders. Imagine if we had the Congress of the top 20 leaders or whatever, and we got them all to strip down either to their underpants or nothing, take away all their status, and just be all these bodies that are all the same. They're floppy bits. Some are skinny, some are fat, whatever, and they're all trying to work out the destiny of the world. And if we can push away all that status and power and wealth and all that sort of stuff, and realize we're all this same sort of flesh and blood, and everyone has issues and all that sort of stuff, maybe the world would be a different place. So that was one thought I had. The other bit was, our society pushes so much on this individualism stuff, show how great you are, set your goals and do this and do that. And I still think it still exists, but it's a paradox. In order to find yourself, you have to be ready to dissolve yourself. You have to be prepared to do, as you said, put your whole soul, spirit, personality, everything that you are through an eye of a needle, cast off all the dregs, and then come through other side and find your mission. And so that again is all about nothingness, but it's a paradox. How can you explain paradox, Ryan? To find individualism, you have to become nothing. You have to lose yourself. So this is the paradox of the Tao and yin and yang, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you feel are the roadblocks that would stop people from, we'll work our way up until more of the juicier, deeper nothingness pieces. So what do you feel are the roadblocks today? Or even, sometimes like those roadblocks emerge in our own life. You know what I mean? Like all of a
Mm.
sudden we do feel this, we do have a responsibility. It feels like a compelling call to do what's right and to manage our life and to try to bring it all into some level of oneness. And then all of a sudden we're going to offer it up to the nothingness.
Yeah.
And so what do you feel are some of
I
the...
think this is a really good question. And if I had to say the one thing is to look inwards, and maybe this is what our whole podcast is about: discover chi, discover the energetic realm, discover the spiritual realm. Because while everyone doesn't have that, they're going to look externally. They're going to look for, I want to please my senses with the most wonderful foods. I want to be entertained. I want to have this, I don't want to look inside at my own internal dialogues. I want to look at all these movies. I don't have power over myself, so I have power over others. I want to connect to, the divine child within me, but I can't connect with that. So we need this remedy, and the remedy is to turn the mind inwardly and start to feel chi, and then that opens up a whole new paradigm, a whole new world. And we could even use the word, it requires an awakening.
Right.
And you've got those symbols behind you, this world of chi where there's different sensations, there's different forces, there's different elements. This is the world that we have to open up and then put those pieces back together again in order to find the nothingness. And we could spend 5 hours talking about that, but we'll try and summarize it for the viewers today. So can I say that? It really requires an internal awakening.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like to give people an experience of that. So to contrast it, the first stage of awakening to your chi or your energy body is you turn the senses inwardly to be able to feel the chi. And we'll give you that experience just in a moment. But we have to go from our intellectual thinking mind into the ability to feel the chi and to feel the energy. And this life force energy is the link between all the subtle bodies or the subtle realms. It enables everything to communicate and work a lot more efficaciously and at ease through, whether it's the physical body or whether it's the spirit or whether it's the, knowing yin yang or knowing our organs or whatever it is. The chi gives us an ability to connect and to communicate and to understand. But however, if we're just in our intellectual mind and we're just in our thinking mind, it's funny because if we buy into the idea that, okay, we came from cavemen or whatever, if that's just a view, then we were more connected to our shamanic senses or our magical qualities in order to survive, in order to work on the land. And in this modern society, so much of technology enables us to live far better than 20 years ago, we were living far better than any other king or queen. Today, we've got it really easy with just like the way we're communicating now, whether it's cars, planes, bikes, just the ability that technology has provided for us with phones, everything else like that. There's this outward drive of excellence, and a lot of people are struggling with just the intellect in today's society, especially with all this information, and to really know who they are beyond their mind. So the first stage is to really, and by the way, this occurred when astrology and science were linked as one kind of like art and concept, and then all of a sudden, and it was good, they split them into two different categories. But what took place is our natural authority in science and also nature was one, and now it's kind of like being split. And so now the intellectual mind is in its own category. And a lot of people have disconnected from whether it's the sun or the moon or the natural cycles. Obviously the moon pulls and pushes the tides. And so we're largely we can be out of sync with nature, and that gets us out of contact with our base sort of senses and drives us, more of this emphasis on just the mind. So we become very top heavy. So the best thing you can do to feel your chi is you just lightly bring your hands together, relax your shoulders, make sure the spine is upright, tuck the chin in, head pulls up to the heaven. In essence, just have good posture. Gently bring the fingers together and the hands together, and then we just start to rub the hands warm. And as we rub the hands warm, we feel the sensation of maybe heat or warmth starting to gather. Maybe you can feel your heart energy, just relaxing the body, taking a couple of deep breaths into the belly. And then as we slowly bring the hands apart, you can feel that there's this, just feel it. You can feel that there's this magnetic energy between the palms of the hands. And if you just allow the hands to pulsate like light back and forward, you can feel this energy, and we call that energy chi. So we are bioelectrical beings. Wherever there's electricity, there's magnetism, and vice versa. So as we pulsate the hands back and forward, we're just feeling this energy of chi between the palms of the hands. And of course, you can imagine that one hand is filled like with a ball of energy, and you can shift it to the other. And the key is to just do slow, gentle movements and turn your senses inwardly to feel the sensation of your fingers and hands and feel this energy that we're feeling. And if you do this every day for a little bit, you start to build up this capacity to feel chi, let go of the mind. And by the way, we're not making the intellect wrong. Like we're obviously here with Dr. Professor Andrew. He's got 7 degrees. Like the intellect is awesome. But our point is that if it's disconnected from your nature or from your chi, your essence, there's so much more of the world that we're missing out on. And if we just go straight up to the head, we can be very disconnected. And it can be also a barrier for us experiencing the bliss, the unity, because the mind is very much like it is about separation and defining things more clearly. And so I'm not sure if you wanted to add on to that, Andrew.
So I agree with what you were talking about before. In part, sometimes I feel like I'm a physician from 3 or 4 centuries ago, where chi and the divine and spirit were just as important as science, astronomy, physics, astronomy and astrology. They were all intermingled, and with the power of science and our ability to measure, there's led to a separation in the healing professions with that, which maybe we could talk about another time. But with getting back to the chi, so the first thing you mentioned is that they feel the chi, but then the second thing is, oh my God, there's all these different flavors of cheese, right? So we got all different tastes, and that's hard work for a lot of people because, they've got to turn all their senses inwardly. So they've got to turn their eyes inwardly. They've got to turn their ears inwardly. They've got to put their tongue inwardly. They've got to put their lips inwardly. They've got to put their tactile receptors inwardly. They've got to put their temperature senses inwardly. And by looking inside oneself, then looking at the poster behind you, then they can start to feel, oh my God, I can feel a heavenly force. Oh my God, I can feel the earth force. I can feel fire. I can feel water. I can feel wind. I can feel thunder. I can feel mountain and lake, which sounds really obscure to the beginner. But if we train ourselves and spend a little bit of time inwardly, then we start to feel these myriad forces. In different systems, they'll have different forces. And we're not saying that the Taoist system with its 8 forces and 5 elements is the only way. It probably doesn't matter whether you might use the 4 system, fire, air, in the Western system, fire, water, air, and what's the other one?
Earth.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you can divide it into various categories. But the most important thing is to do that. And then after that we combine those, and then we start to get the elements. And then after the elements, so in the Chinese system, it's, metal going to water, to wood, to fire, to earth. And then we start merging and fusing those, and then we end up with the yin yang. And then from the yin yang, we end up marrying those 2 opposites to get this nothingness, which is the whole topic we're talking about today. And you can't do it with the intellect. The intellect cannot comprehend this. The only way to perceive it is initially to do really, really hard work, training your senses inwardly, hearing inner sound, seeing inner light, feeling temperatures in the body, feeling different vibrations. Are they pleasant or unpleasant? And you start orchestrating all of this. and putting all those pieces back together again, the way you were when you were a little baby, or the way you were when you were a little child, and the world seemed wonderful and connected and full of love and the quietness of being in the womb. We put them all together, and that is when we put them all together. Then we, in the last bit, we let go of our senses and we find that nothingness. So, from a mystical perspective, this is the path of awakening. This is the way. This is what we're really talking about. And all the traditions have similar, all the mystical aspects of the religions. Maybe we should talk a little bit about that in a sec. But have you got anything you wanted to help people with that awakening and working out how to venture back towards the one through Chi?
Yeah. Just to highlight the senses as a also a barrier or roadblock, because sometimes, so if we look at, like, say, we've got the three energy centers in Taoism, you've got the upper dantian, middle dantian, lower dantian, and also different traditions within that can have even different placements for what they define as their energy centers, but that's probably the most respected one. But the upper dantian, if you look at it, you got your eyes and your ears and your nose and your mouth and taste and that, all of your senses in this area, and that we call them like the three worms. And in this area here, this upper dantian, our senses can be drawn outwardly, and we can just be lost in the sensation of, oh, what's that here, there, and our mind can be scattered in all different places, and it can be attracted to these senses. And so that's one of the barriers for people out there as well, is that the mind can be overacted with the senses, and they're basically led by these upper level of desires, which is different to the heart nature and different to the lower dantian. The lower dantian is more of the sexual energy or region, so then that leads the sexual impulse. But the upper, which is going to have its own beauty and its own imbalance as well. But the upper dantian, our senses can almost feel like it's hijacked. We're controlled by our senses rather than returning them inwardly and balancing them. And I remember last time we chatted, Andrew, had this beautiful image of the Buddha, and it had it was the Buddha image, but it had a skull. And inside the skull was inside the lower dantian region, and it had an image of all the senses inside of that skull. And I just found that to be like a really powerful image of returning the senses down to the lower dantian. Did you want to chat into?
Yeah, we chatted in our preamble, and then I tried to find an exact image of it, and I had trouble. It was initially mentioned by Master Chia, and part of me thought I saw one in China. But then I realized that, the whole of the Buddhism is focused on this. And so I found that there was the Sixth Sense Buddha in Bhutan, and it wasn't a skull image. It was almost like a coconut or a crucible he was holding in his lower dantian. So a lot of the Buddhist approach to the nothingness involves turning the senses inwardly. And again, it was, Master Mantak Chia, who's been my main teacher, came up with that original image of, there was a skull cap with an eye, a skull cap, and it was a nose in there. There was some lips in there and a tongue and some ears. So it's a beautiful image. And it really tries to teach you that in order to find that self-death, perhaps with the skull, you really need to bring the senses inwardly, and then after a while you have to destroy them. So yeah, beautiful image.
Yeah. So what I love is it's sitting at the lower dantian region, and so the dantian means like medicine field or elixir field, and it's literally this field inside of our body that we learn to develop. That is it's a medicine field, or it's a magical place of our body, and it's the safest place to store excess chi. Once you can feel the chi, and then you start to learn to build the chi, it's the safest place to store it. But it's also the mental, emotional, and physical balance point of the body. And what I liked about that image is just like when we're returning our senses down to that place, the senses will become more balanced, more mentally clear, more emotionally like stable. And there's just like this beautiful awakening when what occurs when we return our senses down to the lower dantian. Is there anything you'd like to mention about the dantian or anything like that, Andrew?
Yeah, well, I mean, the as you said, it's the elixir field, but the other image that the Taoist masters used to use is a cauldron. So the cauldron, which was based on external alchemy, and they used to have these crucibles or external alchemy, and then they would grab all these, mercuric oxides, all the, cyanides, even iron. So they would grab all the 5 elements as their poisonous oxides, and then they will put them in the crucible, and then they will put them in the furnace for 3, 6, 9 months. At the same time, they would practice their qigong. They would go on no-grade diets. They would live up in the mountains. And then when they were ready, they would drink these poisonous heavy metal elixirs, and for many of them, they died. But it was part of that journey. So we still use that those metaphors from those old external alchemists from the Han era, Gahong and all that, those characters from that time, sort of around 100 BC to about 200 to 300 AD. We still use those metaphors to help us practice our internal alchemy, which is probably less toxic and probably will give us the long life and the happiness that we're after. But the cauldron is symbolic also of that lower dantian. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Would you like to, if you feel up for it, like introduce or maybe read out one of the poems of emptiness? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've got a few, as you know. I like writing poems. Sometimes poems are good because, you get out of your intellect and you start getting into this rhyme, and it's like you go on a journey, and it's the search for the rhyme that taps into the unconscious or some part of you, the poetic part, and that draws out a different truth to what the intellect would decide. Okay, so how about I do this one today? This one is called Ode to Yin While Throwing Yang in the Bin. Right?
Almost like an Aussie little slang at the end there.
All right, so I'll read it to you. Now, so in some respects, our society is too yang, and you were talking about the suffering, where we're getting lost in our ways. And it's all about achievement, material possessions, status, power, how to stand out, how to be the best at everything, those sorts of things. And so this poem is encouraging the lost, trying to encourage us to go towards the nothingness. It says, do the opposite and invest in loss. To the world of man you must toss. And for all that thrown in the bin, fine appreciation is that of yin. What is this stuff of yin? Do I look to yesteryear or within? So much of the past and inwards is dearth, like dirt, failures and bones of the earth. So how do myself rid these falsities I once bid? Identified as now as not some blocks to undo, that flesh is somehow heir to. A consummation devoutly I do wish, the dissolution of my flesh is duly bliss. No remnants of self to remain, so that access to heaven I will gain. So these knots I do declare to greater forces exposed and bare, centered in that space somehow in abdomen down, that's the lower dantian, while everything else spins around. But parts all deeply agree that sacrifice is ultimately glee, to be lost in the dark with no intention to end or start. In this quietude where faint echoes are gone, and remnant sensibility is ultimately undone, where even shadows are not to foresee, nor even smells to hint any reality. With that sealing of my senses, I lose all my desire and intent. Sex and hunger are fulfilled in this union, while status and reputation are foregone as an illusion. The last to go of this lot is the breathing, the pain duly matched by going back to the beginning, where agendas of the past and expectations of fore are forgotten into timelessness and being unsure. Unsure of identity, becoming undone, for now I connect to the mystery of the One. I am the universe both in expansion and convolution. Thoughts no longer mine, become God's tuition. From this submission to this sort of death I am reappearing, knowing that dying is truly living. Myself is reborn today, and once again embrace life and find my way. So that one's called Ode to the Yin, throwing yang in the bin.
Yeah, beautiful. And I find like the path or the balance can be productive, and sometimes it's needed to go the opposite way in order to find the balance. And so investing in losses is counterproductive to the way that we want to go to that next level, improve the next thing. And often when we go into the emptiness, at least for me, when I was reading that, I could reconnect to the lower dantian. I could feel my virtues starting to balance and calibrate. There's a deeper essence of my, soul or being starting to remind me of, more of the goodness and less of the you need to make money, you need to have fame, you need to, like all of those external drivers and sometimes they're just completely reinforced by everyone else too. They're everyone else's thoughts and feelings, and, the way that we communicate that somewhat can manipulate or speak to the chords of our own belongingness or being. And then we go up to the solution of well, yang is the only way to do it. And in fact, it's like if you can let go of that, I feel like there's a natural flow, which the Taoists call Wu Wei. And maybe this is a good segue to look into some of the names around, emptiness, Wu Wei and that, because for me, it's it's this effortless action of virtue that spontaneously unfolds when I'm in that balanced sort of state. And that makes me a better being or a person. And in general, whether we want to throw labels on it or not, like Christian, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, whatever, I think that at the core we could all agree, if we're all doing good, then that's a great win for everyone. And I find when I balance or return to the nothingness, it's just a recalibration where I'm able to see more clearly and connect more deeply to my nature that is benevolent and kind and naturally wants to do good, just like a young innocent child. They're just what I mean. They're unconditioned by the world, and I just think I'm just very touched by that. So thanks for the recalibration back to the nothingness and emptiness, at least at least a little.
Yeah, so we wanted to talk about some of the. Oh, there's so much to talk about. We could talk about for a couple of days this podcast. With the term, so that they in the Taoist tradition, we maybe this is a good way to introduce, the correlation to the other traditions as well. But they go for the Wuji is that state of nothingness that I was trying to talk about. And maybe even while I've just got all my pieces of paper here, I'll read Lu Dongpin's description in The Secrets of the Golden Flower about this Wuji state, or the nothingness.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Did you want to just give reference to the Golden Flower, just for the audience?
So it's a classic, The Secrets of, by Willem, and that's the original copy, which a lot of people would have had, was the one that had a foreword and a commentary by Carl Jung. So a lot of people have access to that copy, and it's an interesting one. It's meant to be transmitted by Lu Dongpin, one of the famous 8 Immortals. However, it's got a really strong Buddhist influence. It talks about, the microcosmic orbit as a wheel of law. So it's got a little bit of fairly heavy Buddhist infiltration into that text, which has happened with Taoism throughout, with China throughout the eons, is that, Buddhism comes and goes. There's even a little bit of Christianity that came through China for a while. But anyway, we're going off the topic. So this is from this, and this is allegedly written by Lu Dongpin, and he talks about the Wu Ji. And he says, when the desire for silence comes, not a single thought arises. He who is looking inwards forgets that he is looking. In other words, the observer dies. At this time, the body and heart must be completely released. So we lose our body. We don't identify with our body anymore. All entanglements have left without a trace. So all those knots and things that we spend half our lives trying to get rid of it with the physiotherapists, where every shadow and every echo has disappeared. Immeasurable time when all eons are like this moment. So there's so much to that. No thoughts, silence, looking inwards. The body is gone. All the entanglements, sometimes we know we've got a body because, it hurts or there's tension in it. There's no light anymore. There's no sounds anymore. And time also disappears. So that gives us a bit of a profound understanding of this Wu Ji, which is a little bit different from Wu Wei, which was that sort of doing nothing. And often the paradox with the Wu Wei is when you learn to do nothing, everything's achieved. And that puts people's minds in the spin. But then we've got other terms like Su and Kong, and we have various, So do you want to add to that, or will we go on a little bit about Buddhism and Christianity and try and do some correlations there?
Yeah, could you speak into give a definition between Wu Wei and Wu Ji, just so those topics are, those words are more clear for the audience?
Yeah, so Wu Ji is that experience, right? So it's the experience of no echoes, no sound, time is a moment. I don't even know I'm observing anymore. So that's that complete state of self-annihilation. Whereas the Wu Wei is not doing anything. So it's that passive state of accepting everything that is, and there is nothing to do, there is nothing to act. Everything is in its divine, even though life is changing, you're in that position of not going against the flow. So to me, that's the subtle difference. Yeah. So one's more a doing, one's more an experience. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, great definitions. And for the Tai Chi practitioners out there, I mean, hopefully this simplifies, but a lot of the forms, you'll start in the Wu Ji position, and so I think, like, obviously, I know in the Wu style we practice the prerequisite is to empty the mind, and in order to be able to feel the Qi, the mind needs to be emptied in order to, so that way when you're experiencing your non-doing or your Wu Wei, there isn't the mind getting in the road and I think that's in a very simple way. It's like when we're in flow, there's just less thought and more simplicity. Maybe that might be an easy way for people to wrestle with, like, how does effortless action occur? It's like simplicity and less thinking and often there's a bit of a paradox. There is that structure that's been built, which is like, say, the form, and then we learn, we learn the details, we learn the foundation, and then we get into so there's 3 stages that we've chatted about a couple of times, like having the structure. We learn our principles, we learn our horse stance, we learn our foundations, or whatever brings the base of it together. Then we start to practice all of those principles in action, which could somewhat maybe potentially, or at least could be a good leader towards Wu Wei, and that's practicing the form. And then eventually you get to that formless state, which would be, Wu Wei, and once that formless state returns to emptiness, if it's in movement, that is, there should be an access point to that Wu Ji more deeply. So I like that frame of, like, structure, form, then entering the formless.
Well, and I was also thinking about, the secrets for Fa Jin, power in and a lot of students, they want to really concentrate on the strike because they want more power, right? But the secret to getting the more power is that you concentrate on the yin phase and in the closing phase of each form. So when your hands come towards your navel, towards the lower dantian, you go into that one point of emptiness or the extreme yin. And then when you invest in that, boom, out comes the power, boom. And then you've got extreme yang, but people think, oh, I've just got to practice the yang. I've just got to practice the yang and get my strike harder. Whereas really, if you concentrate more and more on the yin and go into the emptiness, if you need to, your yang power is tenfold. So it's always that yin yang exchange with the nothingness that produces, and that's what we're even taught. Both of us have got pretty incredible lives theoretically, and I'm not being arrogant here, but that comes from going into our self-annihilating ourselves, going into the nothingness, and then boom, out comes this character that wants to have a mission and do life, and you think, oh my God, he's just being individual and he just wants to, be famous. But you don't. You've just come from an innocent space, and it's come naturally.
Yeah.
You fly on your own wings, not from purposely trying to be successful. Yeah.
Oh yeah, love it. It ties very well into the poem that you're reading too, and I mean it's so paradoxically profound and brilliant that like all the biggest up levels or upgrades in my life haven't come from trying to upgrade or up level my life, and then you return to that simple state of nothingness and like wow, like there's this infinite source of power or potential that just naturally awakens. It has its own kind of like life or mystery, and especially for the martial arts, there's this untapped reservoir of strength that is nothing to do with the physical body or the yang or anything like that.
Yeah.
And yet it can channel through that yang, and that's where that power is like, wow, like where did that power come from? But it's just like, well, because I have access to the emptiness or the nothingness, and I'm able to channel it through the body, and so the form becomes potentially just a safer way to transmit that kind of like that power. And then of course I think people get halfway stuck up the mountain with like their Fa Jin or their, rather than coming to the pure Taoist principles of soft can overcome hard and really living that, because then there's that sense, well, now that I have power, and they think that it's the self or the ego that has that power, and they sometimes mistake that it's like, well, it's coming from the emptiness, it's coming from that spring that's just pouring out. It's beyond my self concept. And I think that's a beautiful point that you brought up too, because like in Christianity, it's also that, the dying on the cross is the willingness to go into that same point and be reborn.
Yep.
So I don't know if it's you wanted to chat into to that.
So maybe, yeah. So if we had to correlate, I mean, let's talk about the definition of mystical experience. And if we look across all the traditions, all the religions, we would have to say that an experience of the nothingness or experience of the oneness is the state that all religions aspire to, right? And people get confused. They see all the dogma and the wars and all the rituals as the core of the religion. No, it's not. It's the experience of the oneness which is the core. And, my biggest hero, William Blake, he said all religions are one, and they are one through mystical experience. So this nothingness, we could say in Christianity is God. That's the oneness. It's not, Santa Claus in heaven. It's not a father figure. It is this complete annihilation where everything is non-dual, everything is the oneness. And you and I are one and the same. And I believe, Jesus did teach this to the nth degree, that we are all one and the same. But, the followers of Christianity sort of got a little bit lost. But he taught that in order to find, he invested in loss. He invested in self-sacrifice to completely give up everything in order to find everything. And he created one of the a massive religion out of that principle. So in Christianity, it would be God. That would also perhaps be for the Muslim tradition. And then obviously we can talk a little bit about Buddhism, and Buddhism has, emptiness. The nothingness and emptiness are pretty close to what we're talking about. And we can certainly share the Heart Sutra with our listeners today if you reckon it's apt. So I certainly believe that all religions are one, but part of me likes the Taoism because it gives me. I don't get, I spent a long time working with the Dalai Lama, and I volunteered in Dharamsala, working at the Tibetan Delic Hospital, and I used to go to the mornings and do all the chants and theory with the monks in the morning. Well, I just got lost in all the words, and I said, I just can't think that much. And so, but then I liked the Taoism because it was all just energetic practices, just chi, it's just going quiet. And if you follow that chi way, then you find it. But then you realize, oh my God, all the theory of the other religions help, but it's and the stories of Christianity and Jesus all help. But for me, my core practice is probably energetic Taoist practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the self-sacrifice brings us to that greater ability for compassion or love, and obviously Christ was a huge symbolic, man or person that just transmitted that depth of that love through that self-sacrifice. And what I love about the Taoist practice is it actually enables this not to be like a dogma or even I want to be mindful of the words that I use, but it enables me to in some ways go beyond the faith and have an experiential taste or touch of that experience, where it's not just faith in my mind as just a belief, but actually, wow, my heart feels such a depth of love and such a willingness to give and devote myself. And on the outside, it might just look like form. And I think this is actually a really beautiful quote in our Tai Chi system. They got this really important philosophy, which is like the form or the external is false. The intangible or the form is false. The tangible and the form is false. So let me just repeat that again so I'm being clear. The tangible and the form is false. The intangible and the internal details is true. And true intention is found between having an intention and not having intention at all. And so often when we look from the realm of mind or belief, we just see form. We just see the external of things, and then we can just label things really easily. But like if we realize, well, wait up, the form is false. The tangible is false, but the intangible is true. Like, can you feel the love that's underneath the surface? And I feel this is like a key for us recognizing the unity in us all. Is sometimes we feel the form and then we just label it with our own fears. Can we get to our own love? Can we feel the love that's underneath the form in all? And can we act from that love? And I feel like that's when we can love thy neighbor and turn the other cheek and get out of tribal consciousness and really be a demonstration of, well, how does love want to move through me in the world? And how can I recognize the unity in all things and like break out of like the tribal fear, but still hold those beautiful family values and like this. If I know sometimes in Western culture, there's such a focus on individuality, not necessarily from the sense of mysticism or anything, but just being, breaking away from the family, doing your own thing. Whereas in some of the, Middle Eastern cultures, that the family values are so aligned, they're so beautiful. It's almost like that's the place to look for that. But then there can be sometimes a crossover, and these are generalizations. So it doesn't mean that they're true for all people or anything else like that. But I feel like the beauty of tribe is wonderful. And yet if we can break out of that fear or separation of belief and still keep the values that are good, transcend and include, as Ken Wilber would say, but find that love in the core of our heart and see that unity in all of us and allow that leadership to be to be, present. I don't know. At least that's somewhat of the best answer I could come up with in terms of like bringing more of that love to the world. And how do we, I guess, as Taoists, when we do the Tai Chi practice, we're very good at yielding to yang and yin and working with this balance. How do we allow our love to yield the fear? And so that way there's more of a softening and an opening that we can bring through in culture that allows people to just awaken into the love, man, just to let go of the war and the profitability of things, and really just come into a greater awakening of love and union, beyond the labels, beyond the forms, and just let that expression of life be lived through all beings.
Yep. So, yeah, I think that love and union is a good way to talk about how do the Taoist alchemists, how do the Taoist wizards, how do the Taoist masters get to this state in formal practice? Would that be a good time to talk about this?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we in order to find the nothingness, we have to have love and union. And that becomes the last thing we remember before we go off into the nothingness. It's not nothingness, there is no feeling. There is nothing. But just as you're falling into that crevice of nothing, there is beautiful ecstasy, there's sexual bliss, there's loving bliss, there's philosophical bliss, like the three dantians. The intellect says this is the way, the heart loves it and says this is the way, and there's the beautiful feelings from the pelvis that create this final union. So anyway, the way that they did it was they said you have to awaken, you have to feel the chi. And from that, you turn your mind inwardly with the 5 or 6 senses, and then you start labeling all these 8 forces. And then the 8 forces, they start to merge. So you put, for example, you might put wood. For the wood element, you might bring the wind and the thunder together. For the earth element, you bring the mountain and the earth together. And for the metal, you bring heaven and lake powers together. So we end up with 5 elements. Each started off as the 10,000 things in the world of the intellect. Then we moved to 8, and then we moved to 5. And then from the 5, we moved to this final marriage coupling, the final union, what Ryan was talking about, the final love and union. So these 2 forces, the last sensibility in the mind, and it occurs in the lower dantian, middle dantian, upper dantian. We could even say it occurs if we set up cauldrons outside ourselves or in the earth. We can set one up in the middle of the solar system or the stars. But anyway, we do this final union. And then this final marriage, then we put our mind into the middle of the yin-yang symbol, and that gives us a transport. And initially that transport helps us leave our body, so our body dissolves. Then there's a second transport where we become as large as the solar system. And then we get a third transport when we become as large as the universe, and we start marrying the northern constellations with the southern constellations, with the eastern constellations, the western constellations. We bring the pole star Big Dipper together with the south celestial pole, the Southern Cross, and we learn to love everything. And it's not only loving every human being on the planet, every creature, every insect, every nation, every people, every religion. We've also loved all the elements, and then we love all the solar system. Now we love the whole entire universe. And then once we've learned to love everything and put it in divine union, then we get a transport into the nothingness where there's no sounds, there's no light, there's no time, there's no observer, there's no me and you. You and God are one and the same. And you've gone from being of infinite geography, time and space. Then you put yourself through the eye of a needle, you become one little dot of light, and that dot of light disappears. And then you enter into that blissful state. But just as you're falling into that, you feel the most ecstatic love and union. And for a while, even in that state, you may go into ecstatic flight where you fly around in heaven just for a little bit of a rest before you dissolve yourself. And we talked about ecstatic flight in the last episode. So that's the way, the classic Taoist way, and I'm sure similar approaches are in other alchemical traditions and other spiritual traditions. But that's Ryan and I know best the Taoist system, and that's probably the easiest way to summarize it. And we could, again, spend a whole week talking about those Kan and Lee fusion series or whirlwind series of meditations.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
And thanks, Andrew, for that awakening to the greater mind. I think that one of the stages that when Andrew's talking about the stars and the systems, as the mind becomes as big as the universe, and so one of the sort of like prerequisites. But did you want to talk into that? Different practitioners have their different ways into it as well, just so we untangle any perceptions of there being like a like Andrew, you might enter it one way one day, you know what I mean, and then one day a different way, and vice versa. So no one feels like, all right, I've got the formula, you know what I mean, I'm going to just go in with the intellectual mind or whatever capacity of emptiness I may or may not have touched, and maybe, that may not may not be of service. So do you want to talk a little bit about?
It's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
There's no one way. And then, I've just talked about a typical Taoist method, but even within that Taoist method, a lot of it is just letting go. But obviously those fundamental principles that you mentioned, you have to learn to love, you have to invest in loss, you have to invest in the self-annihilation, you have to give up theoretically the ways of the world, your senses, status, materialism, all that sort of thing, and you sacrifice your life for the greater good. And there's a whole lot of principles in that, but then on top of that you add the energetic or the spiritual realm. And I think there is probably a myriad of ways to get to, they always talk about there's many ways to the top of the mountain. Depends whether you climb the east face, the north face, the south face, or the west face, but they all lead to the same spot. So all the different religions would have different ways, and none of them's right or wrong. Everyone's got to look at that challenge within them and trust their own truth, I think.
Beautiful. I think I might mention the Taoist saying, and then maybe I'd like to hear maybe one of the Heart Sutras or something like that. So there's this this might help people as well with like a cosmological frame to position themselves more better in the story. So 10,000 things return to the 8 forces, which is like those 8 elements or forces behind us. The 8 forces go to the 5 elements. The 5 elements go to the 3 dantians, or go to the yin yang. And then yin yang, we have this final duality, and then we enter the one. So just to break that down, the 10,000 things is all the things that we can be distracted with, all the sensations pulling us here or there. On a positive note, it's the stars and the planets, and it's the way that we connect to the oneness of the bigger picture. But the 10,000 things is generally like all the things, all the distractions that can pull us everywhere, and our stabilization of our energy. It's very important in Taoism that we stabilize the Jing Qi and our base sort of energy, because our Shen sits upon that. So our spirit or our consciousness sits upon that. So if our energies and senses are all over the place, we won't have a clear ability to access the one. And so the 10,000 go into the 8 elements or the 8 forces. And so that's when we start to feel, and remember, this is just like a Taoist approach. This is how we start to feel these core energy sensations. And the 8 all return back into the one. They're also a mathematical equation, which is really, really cool. But it's our ability that these 8 elements inside the body, they're either overactive, underactive, or not active at all. And so it's like a linking energy that we're creating. Then we return those to the 5 elements, which are inside the organs. So then the organs start to go through their own purification and balance. Then from the 5, they go to the yin yang. This is this final duality. And sometimes this is where we feel this heavenly energy or lightness inside of our body, but we also feel the earth and the things that we're working with. And eventually there's a transition. And if you look at the I Ching, it's that hexagram where we go with heaven below and earth above, which means peace and harmony. And so this heaven energy that's above, we're able to bring heaven to earth effectively, or in earth, and we create a level of peace and harmony. And so in that transition of that final duality, there is a call for oneness and unity, because if we're separating these parts, it will feel like hell. Like if we're like going, well, heaven's out there and earth is here, and and we're not willing to unify and become one, they'll feel like that final duality will feel kind of like intense, and we might become sick because we're not following the calling, or in some of the ancient medicine systems, including the Chinese medicine system, some of the sicknesses that happen in our body is because we're out of balance with yin yang, and we're just not following the one. So we may have followed the just the money as an example, and then it's led to an imbalance, or as an example, or maybe we've like denied one part that we should be actually more opened up to, in terms of like, it's not here to make success wrong or anything else like that. It's just in order to find that harmony or that unity and bring that balance. And then eventually through the balance of the heaven and earth energies, we enter the bliss, or we enter the one. And as Andrew was saying, the ability to develop that love, which is probably important to say, it's not an emotional body romanticism of an external condition of what we think love is. It's much deeper and more profound than that. So I don't know if it's worth chatting into making a distinction between like love on just a conditional level versus like love as an experiential level of unity that occurs.
The Christians would call it agape. That highest level of love. There's all these different levels of love, but in this highest level of love, where you love all things unconditionally, to the point of almost self-sacrifice, that's the highest level of love that is described.
Yeah, beautiful.
So we do the Heart Sutra.
Yeah, let's do the Heart Sutra.
All right, so the Heart Sutra goes something like this. It's quite beautiful. Form is no other than emptiness. And then they've got the saying, gate paragate, excuse my sense, whatever, parasamgate bodhisattva, meaning gone, everyone gone to the other shore, awakening svaha. Emptiness no other than form. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness only form. Feeling, thought, and choice, consciousness itself, are the same as this. All things are by nature void. They are not born or destroyed, nor are they stained or pure, nor do they wax or wane. So in emptiness, no form, no feeling, no thought or choice, nor is there consciousness, no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body or mind, no colour, sound, smell, taste or touch, or what the mind takes hold of, nor even active sensing, no ignorance or end of it, not all that comes of ignorance, no withering, no death, no end of them. Nor is there pain or cause of pain, or ceasing pain, or noble path to lead from pain. Not even wisdom to attain. Attainment too is emptiness. So know that the bodhisattva, holding to nothing whatever, but dwelling in prana wisdom, is freed of delusive hindrance, rid of the fear bred by it, and reaches clearest nirvana. All Buddhas of past and present, Buddhas of future time, using the prana wisdom, come to full and perfect vision. Hear, then, the great Dharani, the radiant peerless mantra, the prana paramita, whose words allay all pain. Hear and believe its truth. So that's the beautiful Heart Sutra.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So they really talk a lot about the senses. They talk about there's no, pain. We talked about escaping from pain, but they talk about escaping from even the concept of pain altogether. There's you're going to nirvana, which is that place which we could probably also call the wu-ji or nothingness, and even consciousness itself. There's no consciousness, so it's even beyond love, really. Some part of me always thinks, just as you're falling into that place, that's when you have all those ecstatic feelings. But when you're in there, there's nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
Which sounds a little bit dry, because a lot of people would criticize this. It's nihilistic, it's too destructive, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to cope with that. But on the other hand, that's, what's the biggest fear in our society? Me as an emergency physician, everyone fears death, which is exactly that self-annihilation. And we as a society, we hate this state, and yet it's also the portal, or the way that we can rejuvenate and rebirth and make everything new again. So it's a real paradox.
Yeah, it really is, and it can't be understood by the mind, and therefore it'll be judged. It can't be understood. And I think, like, from my own journey of the self-annihilation and all of that, it is intense, and it's one of the reasons why I created the embodied I Ching. So there's more of a gentle way in and a gentle way out, and because it is like the final goal or destination, and so, like, and in some ways it's inevitable. Like, it can happen sometimes randomly, with no one's doing any practice and they reach that sort of state, and sometimes people do a lot of practice and that may not guarantee that they get there as well. But I feel like that it's funny, you talk about self-responsibility and then self-annihilation, on the
people have to be responsible enough to annihilate themselves.
So I think whether static flight or all of these things that we're chatting, it is hilarious. It does get into that cosmic joke thing where the mind releases and you just have to have a laugh, because it's like, sometimes you can't, like, especially when you get in that place of emptiness, it's like, well, there's no mind. It's just like, you're probably just better off just having a good laugh, because it's like, it's hilarious. It just lightens the heart. And now, right now, I'm just in that that no thing, sort of state, where it's just like the mind's emptying and the heart is just opening. And so I think I would probably say, like, in the emptiness, you still want to be full. You still want to have that engagement with life. It's not like you're just sitting there and disconnected from the world. It's not like a numb state. If you really go there, you'll feel like you will pick up life, and you'll just feel, you'll come to life. It's very, so when we're talking about nothingness and that, it's not checking out of society per se. I mean, you could take a retreat somewhere, you could do all these things, but in many ways, you're very much engaged with life. And you come to life even beyond the self. And so I think it's like an expanded version of the self that emerges. And I think there is a skill to navigate it with smooth sailing waters, or as Christians would say, green pastures and clean waters ahead. I think there's a skill in me and understanding our nature and our mind, and and there's also a purification that people go through as well, like that's somewhat needed in order to see the way. Whether it's Jesus talks about the way, that the Tao is the way. That revelation is just really the clarity of the upper dantian, or the mind, or the heart, being able to perceive its way through life, and staying on that straight and narrow.
So I think maybe we're sort of winding up now, but it's a faith that maybe in one's life one has to have several mini deaths, maybe a lot of deaths, and in order to find life, you have to be prepared to die. But having this ability to reboot the computer fairly frequently in order to get rid of the viruses and all the entanglements where the computer slows down too much and it just doesn't work anymore. So we have to have this ability to really on a frequent level, learn how to go back to nothingness so that we can be born anew. You know, that's like the Christian sense of rebirth. And we do the same in Taoism. We do the same when we do our Tai Chi form. We do the same when we do our Qigong. We practice going into this nothingness so that we can live life to its fullest. And then paradoxically, theoretically, you know, I'm still mastering it myself, you know, old age will have less sting, illness will have less sting, death will have less sting. You'll attach less to the earthly realms that make you suffer. You know, you don't need, you can enjoy not eating because you have a tasty meal of qi in your tummy. You can enjoy connecting to your internal entertainment so that there's, you know, you can have sex within yourself. You know, you just become spiritually independent and a more rounded person. And so I think what we're trying to offer people is a sense of techniques to renew, techniques to be reborn, techniques to love life to its fullest and find your mission, your destiny. And in order to find that, we're trying to annihilate you. So we can have a joke about that. But that's how I sort of see what our session today has been, Ryan. Have you got any closing comments?
Yeah, just on the comment of the sexuality part, because I think people there's nothing dirty or like when we're talking about that, the sexual energy is a part of our nature. Like we're here because mum and dad made love. You know, they had sex. That's just like what happened. But then within inside of ourselves, there is, you know, yin and yang or balance, and we can engage in that in such a way that brings us into more unity or love. And so would you like to, because I find sometimes when people hear the word sex or like, you know, in terms of practice, they can go straight to like seeing it as just like this physical, you know, masturbation or something like that, and really misunderstand what we're talking about and label it as that. And then of course, all their own stuff can come up, like, you know, their own guilt or their own journey with it. Could you, maybe it's a good way to end on the pleasure side of it, but just to really talk into the what we're talking about when we speak of the sexual energy and working that as a practice. When we talk about self-sexual intercourse in terms of entering the blissness of our nature.
Yeah, I mean, you know, me as an emergency doc, you know, often I would get, I suppose I get teased a bit. You know, Andrew's into his tantra, and then people often label this as some sort of tantric cult or something, but it's not that at all. What we're really talking about is uniting the spirits and souls, or the energies, or the subpersonalities within the body, the characters within the personality, and then they combine at all three levels. That there's a philosophical union, like we all agree, all the different characters within ourselves. You know, if we looked at ourselves from a Jungian perspective, all the characters agree that we need to work together as a team. And then the heart says, we can no longer feel ashamed about all our urges. We need to love each other and work together as a team. And then the sexual energy is that sort of more, it creates a sort of ecstatic, blissful, divine. You know, when you add sexual feeling to the heart, it makes love. When you add sexual feeling into the mind, it creates poetry. It creates the divine vision. We need all parts of us to come together. We can't put our sex down the toilet and just live in our heart and our head. We can't just live in our heads. We all know that most people in our society live in their heads. So we need all parts of us to come together in this very, it's a paradox. You know, when you theoretically, you know, a lot of these monks found this feeling and they decide to live a celibate life. So it is a feeling to be cherished. It's not a feeling to be discarded, and it's not a dirty subject. It's a beautiful part of us that created life, that created all the animal kingdom, that created all the insects. So how can we say it's a bad thing? And perhaps because we've said it a bad thing, that it's created all the sexual taboos and misdemeanors and all the ugly sides of sexuality in our society because we haven't handled it properly. Something like that.
It actually gives me the sense of like we have developed, or at least it feels like that, so much extra information and consciousness is available. It doesn't mean that we get it right as a collective society or even individually, you know, like, but we've expanded and grown so much compared to like the ancient times and what we know about ourselves and the world and anatomy and like all the subjects. There's so much information, more knowing there. So I guess in ancient times, when you're just dealing with, because sexuality is like a raw power, it's got so much energy there, it's got so much life there. I mean, it gives life, and there's so much responsibility around the sexuality too. Like, you know, if someone falls pregnant, they have children, you know, making sure the children are looked after. You know, there's so much there. So automatically, anything with that much of power, you need to, you know, generally the human nature is, if we don't understand it, we need to regulate it to the max, you know. You need to make it, you need to put all these rules on and say, yeah, and control it. And you know, what we're really saying is, from a health perspective as well, is that the water element in our body, we talk about heaven and earth, but the next two important energies to really work with is the water and the fire in the body. The water is our kidneys, bladder, ovaries for women, our prostate for men, our sexual organs, and that's all the water region of the body. And the fire region is our heart, a little bit our throat and our mind. You know, the mind's thinking all the time, creating all these thoughts, heart's pumping, it's pumping the blood, and that fire energy naturally goes up, whereas the water energy goes down. And so if we disown these two elements in our body, or two parts of our body, the water's going down, the fire's going up, we're actually separate from our center. So one of the things that we do in Taoism, whether it's even Qigong, where you just smile down into the lower dantian, you're returning this fire energy down to the water region, and it's boiling it. So if you look at it from an alchemical point or just a practical point, if the fire is under the water, it's boiling the water and purifying it, because you'd never drink water that wasn't boiled if you had found it in ancient times, because that would be wrong. And so same within the body, you want to heat the water so it gets this purification and unification that occurs. And so if we're disconnected and we're misinformed around our body's nature and how to work with it for greater health and harmony, or balance or bliss or union, or to just embellish our practices or faith with more love, if that's the way that someone wants to do it, or just even end the suffering that people have with their pain and their disconnection, their inability to heal themselves. You know, this is kind of like, there's practices to be able to return the water and fire in the body in order to get closer to that energy of refinement of heaven and earth, and really experiencing it. So yeah, I just thought that might be a nice way to you know, to add some extra value to the audience.
Yeah. So yeah, that's lovely. It's like which again, we can talk for a while, but you really mentioned the Kan and Li practice. Kan is water and Li is practice, which is really the higher level practice to enlightenment. And we put the fire underneath and the water on top. So we put the fire from the heart, and then the sexual feeling, the silky feeling on top. And we let that couple, and initially then it transforms to, like you said, the hexagram, where we've got heaven underneath, yang, 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 and we've got the earth on top, which is yin, yin, yin. But eventually what happens is, in the ultimate truth, is the heaven consumes the earth, and you end up with the hexagram, yang, 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 yang. So you've got 6 straight lines. And that's when the immortal or the spirit body is reborn and flies. And so even from the Taoist I Ching approach, they use those metaphors, and you can't do it if you don't use your sexual feeling, you don't use the water element, you ain't going to complete the process. You're not going to get to the nothingness. But I guess that's up for a lot of members in society to work through it themselves and realize that, you know, you can't cut off a part of yourself in order to find God, which some of the devotees have done throughout history, but we won't talk about that today.
Yeah. Beautiful. And so that hexagram is hexagram number 1. So usually if I'm doing, it's a wonderful hexagram. So basically, hopefully we've returned everyone back to the one at some level or degree. You know, take what is useful today into your heart. You know, what is beneficial. There might be parts that we mentioned that are beyond, that need practices in order to bring the life of that alive. So hopefully, take what is of value, and hopefully it's been a beautiful conversation to the heart and to the soul and to the body and to the spirit today as well, that supports people returning to the one, or returning to the emptiness, or the nothingness. Is there anything else we'd like to we mentioned the golden the text of the golden
Secrets of the
flower?
gold. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
is there anything else?
I mean,
Yep.
there's so many books on Kan and Lee practice. The Secrets of the Golden Flower mainly goes on about the microcosmic orbit, which is, energy going up the back and down the front, and uniting heaven with earth. So I think those people can always write to us if they need more text, or we can put some extra books on the show notes if you like.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Well, I'll look forward to hearing everyone's comments and what you'd like to hear furthermore in terms of topics that we can chat into or go deeper into. Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you for the audience for being a part of it. And we look forward to seeing you guys on the next adventure of our Chi Chats, and where we go in the next adventure.
Yeah, so maybe everyone remember that we're just try and get a glimpse before we sign off of that state where your body disappears, that all the energies in your body become one. There's this final marriage. You don't need a body anymore. You feel connected to everything. And then you feel you've expanded, you've loved everything. And then you go to this one space where you and everything are one and the same. And in that state, you get you get that sense of becoming new again. And we hope that you all feel that. We hope you all sense that. We hope that you all find that beautiful position and do your practice. And we're here to help.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.